Welcome back to Untethered. Cody and Ange here. We're just taking a little break out of our day to shoot some pool here at the rec hall at our campground in Fletcher, North Carolina. We thought this would be a good time to talk to you guys about Harvest Host and Boondockers Welcome. We mentioned this in our episode from Clyde, Texas a while back, that we've had the program for a while, but we really haven't made good use of it. We got to use it again this past week down in Pelion, South Carolina, and we really enjoyed it, and we're kind of to a decision point because our membership expires in April. So we need to make a decision on whether we're going to do this for another year at $139 a year. We try to be really smart with our money, and we want to give you guys advice that helps you be really smart with your money out on the road. So we wanted to go through 4 things that were key to us that we took into consideration when making the decision of whether to extend our Harvest Host membership or not. We'll get to our final decision here at the end of the episode, but let's go ahead and kick this thing off with number 1. So number 1, and this is kind of important, know your equipment. We've only been to a few Harvest Host or Boondocker Welcome sites, but one of the ones we went to had a pretty steep uphill sandy drive. We didn't need 4-wheel drive, they just graded the road, but had it have just come a recent rain, we might have needed 4-wheel drive. Some places have some low dips, maybe they have some obstacles to get around, so think about, maybe if you have a Class A and you set real low to the ground, or if you're in a Class C and maybe you don't have 4-wheel drive, it may limit you on places you can go. Now, with that said, the hosts are incredible about putting all that stuff into the descriptions, but it's really something you should consider is your equipment somewhat off-road ready? And I use that term off-road loosely. I'm talking dirt roads, potholes, maybe some sand, maybe a little bit of mud. Nothing crazy that we've seen so far. It may be out there, it may not. You can let us know in the comments if you've ran into a bad situation. But know your equipment and what it's capable of. Number 2, and this is really an important one, know your limitations. Before you jump into a boondocking situation, I would definitely recommend going for a camping trip and just don't hook up at your full hookup site. Figure out, living as normal, how long you can go before you fill up your gray water tank with your shower and your dishes, your black water tank for your sewer. Think about those things because from personal experience, if you're in a boondocking situation and your tanks are fuller than full, and you got a couple more days to go, take it from us, that's a real problem. So understand what your limitations are as far as your tanks. Do that little test and then come back and do another test and try maybe doing the military showers or an army shower. If you don't know what that is, that's where you turn your shower faucet on, get wet, turn the water off, soap up, turn the water on, rinse off. It is a water saver and it does make a huge difference, but you have to be comfortable with doing those sorts of things. Other things to consider are your power situation. Do you have solar on the trailer? How long will your batteries last, keeping up your accessories that you have on your individual rig? For us, we have a 12-volt fridge, which takes a lot of power. It's cold right now, so we're running our furnace, we're running our lights, we're charging our phones. So for us, we can't go overnight without sunlight in our solar system. We only have one panel, it's 370 watts, and it'll keep everything going during the day. But when it gets dark outside, especially on shorter days, we often wake up with pretty low voltage in the morning, and that spells some pretty big problems. So for us, we carry a generator. There is a filter on the Boondockers Welcome Harvest Host app where you can put generator friendly. Not all of them are. We've been to one place that didn't care how long we ran our generator, and we went to another place that wanted them shut off by 10 p.m. That actually worked out okay for us because we were able to start it up at daylight, but we were very low on power. And I think we actually did some damage to our batteries by running them too low. As a friendly reminder, if you're using a regular lead acid battery like a marine deep cycle battery or a car battery, you don't want to let those get below 50% because they start to heat up and it does damage to the batteries. That's a big reason why I'm in the market for 2 new batteries. Think about things like, do you carry a honey wagon to take your waste away to an off-site dump location, and where's the nearest one? Just some things to think about in your limitations, because while Harvest Host or Boondockers Welcome, whichever side you're on, or both as we are, generally in our experience, they don't have dump stations, and you may be driving a couple of 100 miles to get to your next destination. So you really got to play that out, because if you leave with 2 or 3 or more full tanks, you're carrying a lot of extra weight and you're burning extra fuel on your drive to the next campground. Another thing to think about is what's your purpose for boondocking. There's a lot of reasons to do it, and the obvious one is to save a little bit of money, and we'll get to that here in a second. But really think about your purpose for boondocking. Are you tired of the campground thing because you've been doing that for a while and you want to get out somewhere secluded, away from people where you can have total privacy? If so, Harvest Host and Boondockers Welcome may be your best bet, because generally it's just you out there. You're on someone's farm or at someone's business, and it's you and only you and whoever's traveling with you. If it's for the sole purpose to save money, I'm going to get to number 4 in a second and talk a little bit about the cost and some things that you may not be thinking about. For us, we like to use Boondockers Welcome or Harvest Host as we're passing through places. We've tried to slow down our travels from doing 500 or 600 miles a day to doing 200 or 300 miles a day, and they really come in handy when you just need to slide in somewhere at night, stay hooked up, leave the next morning and keep rolling. But you really need to think about, why do you want to boondock? Because there's a lot of stresses that come with that. One of the reasons we like Boondockers Welcome and Harvest Host is because sometimes we like to do things or go see people that are a little bit off the beaten path. Maybe they're not close to any kind of attraction or big touristy area. So it's generally a nice, safe place where we can drop our trailer, put a kingpin lock on, go do whatever we want to do in that area, and move on the next day. It's just a really nice way to get off the grid, get secluded, do what you need to do, and move on down the road. But there's definitely a case to be made for the program when it comes to those type of things. And then another thing to think about is, how long are you going to stay? We work during the week, so we really need 5-day stays. You want to think about things like accessibility in these places if they're off the beaten path. If you don't have Starlink, is your internet going to work? We like to use the Coverage app from the App Store, and it gives us a pretty good understanding of what cell service is going to look like when we get there. But if you don't have Starlink and you're out in the middle of nowhere, or if you do have Starlink and you're backed into the woods at a bunch of trees, are you going to be able to connect and get any necessary work or communication done while you're on site? So for us, anywhere that we look at that doesn't have a 5-day max, and they're few and far between, is kind of a deterrent. But we do a lot of traveling over the weekends. So maybe we stop in somewhere on a Friday night and we drive all day Saturday, and then we land somewhere Saturday afternoon. In those situations, it works really, really well for us. Again, you just have to think about your purpose and why you want to boondock and what your particular camping style is, because there's no shame in going to the KOA, taking the easy route. They're usually right off the interstate. We love KOA and we use them a lot. Or maybe you want to give yourself a new challenge and see how long you can stay off the grid. How long can you make that 90-gallon tank of water last before you have to go on the hunt for some fresh water? And that's not to say that some of these places don't offer it, but they don't all offer it. And it's very dependent on the individual host. Okay, so now that I just beat Angela in pool, I get to finish this thing out.
Hey, I only left one on the table. I mean, I'm improving.
So fourth and finally is cost. And remember that I overthink everything. I'm kind of a spreadsheet guy, and I drive Angela nuts with all this information. It's $139 a year, which as a whole isn't all that much. So far, a lot of the Harvest Host and Boondockers Welcome sites that I've looked at have been a little bit off the beaten path. Whereas a lot of times, if you're going to a destination, you're going to have campgrounds that are very close to what you actually want to go do while you're camping. So a thing to consider is, if you have to go 50 miles out of your way to save money with a Harvest Host, there's a cost there. If you're driving that extra, let's say 100 miles, and you get 10 miles to the gallon towing, that's 10 gallons of fuel at, what are we paying here lately, $3.30, $3.40 a gallon, so that's an extra $35. If you had no reason to be there, you could almost justify going ahead and sliding into a campground closer to your destination. In the world of logistics, we call those out of route miles. If you're going from A to B and you divert to C for some reason, that's out of your route, and there's a cost that's associated with that in terms of fuel, your maintenance cost, etc., etc. If you're in a situation where you're going to need solar and you don't already have it on your trailer or on your motorhome or whatever you're running with out there, there's a cost to that too. You're probably going to have to buy a panel that comes with the cost, installation that comes with the cost, batteries that come with the cost. So the way that I like to look at those things is, if I'm going to add an extra battery to my trailer that should last 1 or 2 years, it kind of has to pay for itself. So when I think about my cost of Harvest Host, it's not free because it costs $139 a year divided by how many times you actually use it, with a broken down cost of the equipment that you had to buy to do it. For instance, our generator, I figured out, cost us about 90 cents an hour to run. And that's with a life cycle of 1,000 hours. We're already over that, so our cost is coming down. But at 90 cents an hour running 24 hours a day, that's almost 24 bucks and you haven't bought gas yet. That's just the cost of the equipment, the maintenance on the equipment. That doesn't cover fuel. So you've got equipment cost, you've got out of route miles, anything else that you would do that you normally wouldn't do if you were just going to a campground, you have to figure into that cost. Harvest Host and Boondockers Welcome are one thing now. Just a quick description, I know I've covered it before, but the Harvest Host is really more of businesses, bars, wineries, restaurants, what have you. And you stay on their property, usually for one night max, from what I've seen. Those places are gonna kind of have the soft expectation for you to have dinner there, or maybe breakfast, or maybe go into the winery and get a bottle of wine or two. And we love supporting small business, but we also have a budget in terms of how many times we go out to eat and so on and so forth. We really like to kind of cook at home in the camper. So if we pull into a Harvest Host and we have to buy a $30, $40, $50 dinner that we weren't planning on buying, we could have just went to the campsite, had full hookups, plugged into 50 amp, and life is nice and easy. If you're a restaurant buff and you like those things anyway, and there happens to be a Harvest Host location along with it, awesome. You're spending money you would have already spent anyway. So that's just some things to consider, because just because it's cheap, that doesn't mean it's free. For 2023, going into April of 2024, we're gonna go ahead and renew Harvest Host / Boondockers Welcome. We've only used it 4 nights this year. So our cost is somewhere around that $35 a night range when we figured in our extra expenses. Starting in April 22, we average $28 a night on campground stays. Now that includes when we stayed with friends in Arkansas that cost us nothing, stayed down at the lake where we have an annual membership fee to stay there that's very, very cost effective for us, and some Harvest Host things we dropped in there. As far as our cost on Harvest Host, we basically figure out what it costs per year, divided by how many times we used it. And I know if it's cool outside and I don't have to run the air conditioner and I can just use the generator to keep the batteries up and run the furnace, I use about 4 gallons of fuel per day. Right now, fuel's around $3, $3.30, depending on where you're at. So that's about $12 a day in fuel on top of any out of route miles. So we didn't make good use of it this year, but I do feel like there's a big opportunity next year, because if you take that money and divide it out over 12 months, if we're just gonna use it one time per month, it's under 12 bucks a shot. We can use it more than that. A lot of times we fall into the lazy trap of, oh, here's a nice campground, let's just go there. But we want to kind of challenge ourselves to save a little more money in this second year of full-time RV living. So we're going to go ahead and renew with the goal of using it once per month or 12 times the first month, however it works out, but averaging out to once a month over the course of the year. This is what works for us. It all goes back to your purpose, because you can save all the money in the world and hate your experience. You're not going to have a good time, and you're going to abandon full-time RV living pretty quick. Or you may spend a ton of money and stay at super nice campgrounds and you hate being around a million people and all that activity, and you're going to have a really bad experience. This isn't about money. This is about experience. This is about what feels good to you and what style you like. And for us, it's working out. We're going to try it one more year, and we'll let you know in 2024 if we're going to go back for round 3. But since I've already smoked Angela and pool, I think we're going to jump on this ping pong table, have a little more chill time, and get back to some work this afternoon. If you're new here, welcome aboard. Thanks for watching. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Remember, you've only got to hit it once. If you hit it on every episode, you're actually going to unsubscribe. And we do see a little bit of that going on. The notification button is going to let you know when we have new videos out. And we look forward to you guys joining us here every week for new videos. Don't forget to join us on the journey. Cody and Ange here signing off. You guys have a good week. Safe travels.
Bye, guys.